In the stillness of your heart, when the world grows quiet and memories begin to stir, there comes a soft ache, a whisper from the past. It may rise unexpectedly, like a song you thought you'd forgotten, a face from long ago, or a word you never said. Regret. It is not always loud. Sometimes it is a quiet companion, sitting beside you in the empty room, asking gently, "What if?" There is a man who once tended a small garden behind his home. In his youth, he had planted it for his wife. Rows of tulips, lavender, and bright marigolds she adored. When she passed, he let the weeds take over. For years, the garden remained untouched, and each spring, the blooming of flowers elsewhere would bring a hollow feeling. One day, now well into his 80s, he stepped out into that tangled patch of earth and sat quietly among the weeds. He didn't pull them out or try to revive the garden. He just listened. A neighbor found him there, and he said, "I thought I was grieving her, but I've been grieving all the years I didn't tell her I loved her more." In Buddhism, this man's sorrow reflects dukkha, the deep, sometimes subtle suffering that clings to impermanence. Everything we love, everything we wish we had done, will eventually slip through our fingers. But the teaching isn't cruel. It isn't about punishing ourselves for what we've lost or failed to do. Instead, it invites us to see this is the nature of life, to pass, to change, to unfold beyond our control. You may have regrets too, conversations not had, apologies not spoken, time spent chasing what never mattered. But what if regret wasn't something to fear? What if it was simply the echo of your soul, reminding you that you loved, that you cared, that you wanted to live more fully? The Buddhist way is not to erase the past, but to make peace with it. Regret is a form of clinging to the version of life that never was. But you are not bound by it. Through mindfulness, we learn to sit beside our regrets without judgment. Like sitting in the overgrown garden, we don't have to fix everything. Sometimes, simply being present with what is, letting it speak, letting it breathe, is the beginning of freedom. So ask yourself gently, what regrets have I been carrying like stones in my pockets? And what would it feel like to set just one down? Imagine a woman standing in her kitchen, holding an old photograph in trembling hands. In it, her brother smiles beneath a summer sun, a moment captured decades ago, long before the arguments, the distance, and the silence. He passed away 2 years ago, and though she attends church and keeps herself busy, the ache hasn't softened. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. She never called. She never said, "I'm sorry." This is the kind of regret that ages into the bones. It isn't always about great mistakes. Often, it's about the subtle moments, the words left unspoken, the love withheld, the bridges we let burn quietly. In Buddhist thought, such feelings arise from attachment, not just to people or outcomes, but to a version of ourselves we wish we had been. A better sister, a more patient parent, a braver soul. But the truth is, who we are in this moment is shaped not just by what we did right, but also by what we've endured and failed to do. Regret, then, isn't proof of failure. It is a sign that you're alive, that you remember, that something mattered deeply to you. There is a Zen teaching that says, "Let go, or be dragged." At first it sounds harsh, but in practice it is deeply compassionate. Letting go does not mean forgetting or pretending. It means recognizing that holding on to pain doesn't bring back the past. It only tightens the grip of suffering. You might think, but if I let go, am I dishonoring the memory? Am I excusing myself too easily? These are tender human questions, and the Buddhist answer is neither denial nor self-condemnation. it is awareness. To see your regret fully, without running from it. To bow to it, not as a punishment, but as a teacher. Think of the ocean, waves rise and fall, some gentle, some fierce. Regret is a wave, but the ocean, your awareness, is vast and unbroken beneath it. When you breathe deeply and let yourself feel, the wave loses its grip. You float. So now, take a breath. Think of one regret, not to dwell but to witness. Can you sit with it, not as an enemy, but as something that once tried to teach you love? There's an old Buddhist story of a monk who carried a heavy sack of stones up a mountain. When asked why, he said each stone represented a regret from his life. The people he'd hurt, the promises he'd broken, the chances he never took. I carry them, he said, because I deserve to feel their weight. But the master he met at the summit simply smiled and replied, and yet none of these stones ever built anything. This parable touches something deep. Many people, especially in the later years of life, carry their regrets like penance, as if feeling bad enough could somehow undo the past. But Buddhist wisdom gently points out, pain is not a currency that purchases redemption. You do not have to hurt in order to prove your love or sorrow. You are not a bad person for not getting everything right. Let that sink in for a moment. The human mind, especially when it slows down in older age, tends to revisit old memories like a library it never finished organizing. Some books are joyful. Others are filled with pages of shame, confusion, or longing. But the shelves do not need to be rearranged. They need to be dusted off with compassion. Modern psychology has echoed this ancient truth. Self-compassion, the practice of offering yourself the same kindness you would offer a dear friend, has been proven to reduce anxiety, depression, and feelings of failure. When combined with mindfulness, it creates a space where regret doesn't spiral into self-hate, but softens into understanding. Consider this: if a friend came to you and confessed a regret that has haunted them for years, how would you respond? Would you scold them? Would you say, "Yes, you deserve to carry this forever"? Or would you reach for their hand, listen gently, and tell them they've done the best they could with what they knew? Now ask yourself, why should you deserve anything less? Aging isn't a punishment. It's a return, a homecoming to the essence of who you are, beyond the roles, the mistakes, and the striving. And part of that return is learning to cradle your regrets like wounded birds. Not to keep them, but to let them rest before they fly away. You don't have to earn peace. You only have to allow it. So pause right now. Think of something you've been holding on to, a stone you've carried up your own mountain. What might it feel like to finally put it down? There's a house that's been standing for nearly 70 years at the edge of a quiet Midwestern town. Its owner, a retired teacher named Grace, lives alone now. Her children visit occasionally, and her days are filled with books, birdsong, and the ticking of old clocks. But every afternoon she walks to a small cedar box on a shelf in her living room, a memory box filled with letters never sent. Inside are words she wrote but never dared to share, apologies to her first husband, gratitude to her father, sorrow for a friend she distanced herself from during a difficult time. Over the years she's reread them, rewritten some, torn up others. Not to change the past, but to listen to it. This, she once told a neighbor, is where my forgiveness began. Buddhist psychology teaches that regret becomes suffering when we avoid it, suppress it, or identify with it as who we are. But when we give it space through writing, reflection, stillness, it becomes a doorway, a moment of presence, a gentle turning inward. The act of acknowledging your regrets, even silently, is a radical form of healing. It's like lighting a candle in a dark room, not to banish the shadows but to learn how to see in their presence. You begin to recognize the contours of your humanity, the flaws, the fears, the blind spots, with compassion rather than condemnation. This is why mindfulness is not about escaping emotion. It is about returning to it with eyes open and heart soft. When you sit in silence and let your regrets speak, they often say not, "You are unworthy," but "You tried, you cared, you didn't know how else to love at the time." We grow old, but many of us have never learned how to grieve the life we didn't live, the choices not made, the versions of ourselves we abandoned. But grieving doesn't mean giving up. It means honoring. It means making room for both joy and sorrow to sit at your table and not turning either away. So tonight, or perhaps tomorrow morning, find a quiet space. Light a candle, if you'd like. Take a piece of paper and write a letter you will never send. Say what needs to be said, not for them but for you. Let the words rise like mist from a still lake, soft and unhurried. And when you're done, hold that paper like a prayer. You may keep it, you may burn it, but know this: the healing happened not in the result, but in the willingness to feel. What might you say if no one else ever had to hear it? Only your heart. In a monastery nestled high in the Japanese mountains, there is a custom observed by aging monks. Once a year, each monk walks alone into the forest carrying a simple wooden bowl. There beneath the trees they speak aloud to the wind, not prayers but memories, regrets, words of anger or shame or longing. No one listens. No one judges. And when they're done, they place a small stone in the bowl and walk back in silence. The stone is not kept as a burden. It is placed on an altar of impermanence, a reminder that even sorrow has its season. This ritual may seem distant from everyday life, yet its essence is deeply human. We all need space to speak what was left unsaid, to admit what we wish had gone differently. In Buddhist practice, this space is called conjanti, the perfection of patience. But patience here doesn't mean waiting for time to erase the pain. It means allowing your sorrow to exist without rushing to fix it, without needing it to go away quickly. How often have you hurried past your own feelings, covered them up with distractions, with busyness, with the gentle mask of "I'm fine"? But in doing so, regret ferments. It grows sharp. It becomes a secret pain, one that hardens the heart. And yet, what softens the heart is simple: presence, a willingness to pause, to say to yourself, "Yes, that hurt. Yes, I wish it had been different. And yes, I am still here, breathing, worthy of love." There's a story of an elderly woman in Oregon who lost her sister decades ago. They hadn't spoken for years before the sister died suddenly, and the silence between them had calcified into guilt. One day, while cleaning out her attic, she found a childhood toy they had once shared. She sat down, toy in lap, and began to hum a song they used to sing together as girls. She cried. She laughed. She forgave. No one else was there. But for the first time, she felt her sister was. This is how healing often happens, not in grand gestures or formal apologies, but in quiet reconnection with the love that was always beneath the hurt. Regret tells us where the wound is, but compassion, even self-compassion, is the balm. So the question is not, how do I forget? The question is, how do I remember with kindness? When was the last time you sat beside your sorrow and simply said, "It's okay to feel this"? Sometimes the hardest regret to carry is not what we did to others, but what we feel we did to ourselves. The roads not taken, the passions abandoned too soon, the silence we kept when our heart longed to speak. A retired postal worker named Samuel once shared his story in a community circle. He had dreamed of being a jazz musician in his youth, playing saxophone under city lights. But fear of failure, of poverty, of disappointing his parents kept him from trying. Instead, he took the safer path, built a steady life, raised a family, and yet at 72, he still dreamt in music. "I don't regret raising my kids," he said quietly, "but I do regret not knowing what that other version of me could have sounded like." This kind of regret is subtle and bittersweet. It doesn't come with blame. It comes with wondering, and Buddhist philosophy meets that wondering not with judgment, but with non-attachment. The understanding that clinging to what might have been only clouds our ability to see what still is. The truth is, the past cannot be lived again, but the self that longed to live differently still lives within you. That longing is not a curse, it's a guide. In Buddhist practice, there's a concept called beginner's mind, approaching each moment as if for the first time, free of the heaviness of past expectations. You are never too old to begin again, not in the way the world defines beginning, but in a quieter, more sacred way. You can pick up the saxophone, you can write the poem, you can speak the words your younger self never had the courage to say, even if only to yourself. And even if your hands tremble more now, even if your memory falters or your body aches, your spirit has never been more ready. There is a tenderness that only age can bring, the kind that doesn't rush, doesn't compete, doesn't need to prove. It simply wants to be honest. To live whatever life is left not as a performance, but as a truth. So what is one dream, one voice, one forgotten self you've buried beneath the duties of a lifetime? What might it mean to sit beside that part of you now, not to fix it, but to finally listen? The path to peace is not paved with perfection. It is walked in quiet steps of honesty, forgiveness, and beginning again and again. One of the most liberating truths in Buddhist wisdom is this: you are not the person you once were. The you who made that mistake, who turned away, who stayed silent, that person no longer exists in the same way. You have changed. Life has changed you, and with that change comes the possibility of release. In the Buddhist tale of Angulimala, a feared killer who wore a necklace of his victim's fingers, transformation comes in the most unexpected way. When he encounters the Buddha on the road, he tries to chase him, but the Buddha keeps walking calmly. Frustrated, Angulimala cries out, "Stop!" The Buddha finally turns and says, "I have stopped. It is you who has not stopped." In that moment, something shifts. Angulimala sees himself clearly, sees the suffering he's caused, the torment he's trapped in. He renounces violence and becomes a monk, eventually known for his deep compassion. This story is not about justifying wrongs. It is about understanding that no matter what you have done, no matter how long you have carried your regret, transformation is possible, not in the eyes of others, but within the quiet truth of your own heart. You may think, but what if I can't be forgiven? What if I can't forgive myself? These questions carry immense weight, especially in the later chapters of life. And yet, Buddhism does not offer forgiveness as a reward. It offers understanding as a path. Forgiveness is not a transaction. It is a release from the cycle of self-blame, from the prison of memory, from the belief that you are forever bound to your worst moment. Sometimes, the act of forgiving yourself is not loud or final. It's a soft, persistent unfolding. It begins when you stop trying to rewrite the past and start listening to it with open hands. There's an old man in Vermont who tends to a small grove of maple trees. Years ago, he disowned his son after a bitter argument. They haven't spoken in over a decade. Every spring he walks through the grove, whispers his son's name, and scatters a handful of sugar maple seeds. I plant one for each word I never said, he told a neighbor. I don't know if he'll ever forgive me, but I'm learning to forgive the man who stayed silent. Forgiveness isn't always reunion. It's not always reconciliation. Sometimes it's simply the act of not punishing yourself today for the person you were yesterday. So now, close your eyes, breathe in, let the weight rise. What might change if you believed, even for a moment, that you are already enough to be free? In the hush of life's later years, something begins to stir, not ambition, not desire, but a longing for peace, for stillness, for a life no longer ruled by what was missed, what was broken, what was never spoken. This longing is not weakness. It is wisdom finally ripening. It is the soul's quiet recognition that what matters now is not fixing the past, but being whole in the present. A Zen master once said, "The lotus blooms not in the absence of mud, but because of it." Your regrets, your wounds, your most painful choices, these are not stains to be hidden. They are the fertile ground from which your compassion grows. Without sorrow, there would be no softness. Without mistakes, there would be no humility. Without loss, there would be no true appreciation of presence. And so, to grow old is not to shrink. It is to blossom differently. Letting go, as taught in the Dharma, is not forgetting. It is not pretending it never mattered. It is opening your hands, your heart, your breath, and loosening your grip. It is walking forward, not because the past is erased, but because you no longer need it to define you. You have loved, you have hurt, you have tried, and sometimes you have fallen short. But every moment you have left is a blank page, not to rewrite your history, but to live your truth more gently. There is a story told in some Buddhist circles about an old monk who, at the end of his life, was asked what his greatest spiritual accomplishment had been. He didn't speak of enlightenment or years of meditation. He simply smiled and said, "I learned to forgive myself." This is the invitation extended to you now, not to strive, not to fix, but to lay down the stories that no longer serve you, to release the echo of what cannot be changed, and to walk, breath by breath, into the lightness of this moment, where you are no longer who you were, but exactly who you are, because in the end, the person who has learned to love themselves no longer fears losing anything.